Well, it's certainly grins per mile, I'll give it that. We think the G87 M2 is the best BMW M car on the market today. Come along with us to find out why. But let's talk about how you're going to use this car for the other 95% of your ownership. It's $65-ish thousand. You pick your trim. Do you want it? Do you want to be here? For a commuter, you know, I'm pretty comfortable. The interior is real. They've definitely corrected that feedback from the previous M2, but this has not been designed for a daily driver. I feel like this has been inspired by going fast and having fun, which I love, don't get me wrong, I love. We are in a coupe, and we have the same S58 motor as you'll get in the M3. The real question is, should you buy an M3 or should you buy an M2? And I have an unpopular opinion about that, but I think the M2 that we're driving in right now is the last real M3. Why is that? Well, we're in the tiny M2, slightly longer wheelbase than previous generations, but relatively small compared to the M3. And that's what I think BMW's lost in the new G chassis thing. All the G cars are too big, they're too heavy. I mean, we're in an M2 and this thing weighs almost as much as an M4. And I know it's safety, it's crash standards, it's etc. But you have to get more creative and more clever with it. And I do think part of some of that extra weight comes from the fact that they said, okay, people want their M2 to be a place they want to be and they want to drive and they want to exist. So they put some of that money back into the interior and they put some of that weight back into the interior. And I get it. I'd say that was a good compromise to make. But do I need a back seat? Do I need a back seat in an M2? I don't know. Does any M car need a back seat? I don't know. Compared to the F chassis M2, we have a longer wheelbase car as well as a wider track width car. So all of that equates to what should be a more capable and more planted, high-speed turns and twisties car. And from our little bit of country driving, all well within the speed limit, I have to agree. I think it feels like it's probably closer to Grand Tour car than it is a track car. And if I can make some assumptions for BMW, I think that's what they went for. Probably one of the biggest criticisms of the previous generation M2, the F chassis stuff, is that the interior was a really cheap place to be. And I agree with that feedback. In this G chassis M2 or G87 M2, man, just look around. It feels inspired. Infotainment aside, you're gonna love it or hate it, but that's the way technology is going. But you have carbon fiber and aluminum trim. It's good to the touch. A nice leather wrapped wheel. The knob is leather. The whole interior sensation of this car, you can tell, has been redesigned to be a place you want to be and have things you want to touch. And that's hard in new cars. That's hard when accountants get to build cars. And one of the things that I like about BMW, especially over other car manufacturers, is that accountants don't build cars at BMW, engineers do. If you do an oil change on a BMW, it doesn't suck. You ever do an oil change on a Toyota or a Mazda, you're gonna have oil all over your cross member. So it's those little added benefits that I like about BMW. I see a twisty road sign to the right and some moose. Oh, that's fire breathing. We certainly woke it up with mode M1. Planted, driven a lot of fast cars on a lot of situations. Even the M4 on Öhlins feels great, but it doesn't feel like this. It takes turns like it knows what it's doing. It's planted, it's controlled. The exhaust burble is just right. But you're not gonna buy an S58 powered anything and leave it stock. So this is where the fun starts happening. And this is where, if you're on the fence, should I buy the M2 or should I buy the M3 or M4, whatever it is, go M2. I'm putting it in writing now. M2 is the S58 car to own. So who can afford the new M2? Well, if you're in your 30s, it might be a car you aspire to. If you're in your 40s, you probably can afford one. And if you're in your 50s, you're probably adding to your collection. And any range outside of that, you're probably in some other, outside use case. But we just drove through a small, quaint town with a 25-mile-per-hour road in second gear, and the neighbors don't hate us. In fact, we're getting a lot of people checking out the car, smiles. You're not getting that rasp, that empty, hollow exhaust sound. And that's because we are funneling all those beautiful horsepower and sound-inducing exhaust gases through a Turner Motorsport exhaust with some high-flow cats. So we're adding just a smidgen of power to an otherwise excellent motor, excellent chassis. And that's mated up front with our Turner Motorsport intake, all carbon fiber, engine bay looks sublime. But that combo produces a really nice sound when you want it. For example, M2 mode. Now I'm fire breathing. Now the people don't want to talk to me. Now instead of smiles, I'm getting scowls. And I think that's okay. I think that's by design. And I think that's why the G87 M2 is the best car you can buy right now. I don't mean the best M car. I don't mean the best Euro car. I think we are sitting inside the best car on the market in 2024. Full stop. All right, I can hear it in the comments already. Best car in 2024. There's the Golf R. There's the new Corvette, there's some other Aston Martin, who even knows? I'm talking the best obtainable real car that the average person can buy. $65,000 price tag is no small feat, no small price, I agree. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, it's the cost of a nice SUV. And would I rather have, I don't know, Suburban, or would I have an M2? I think we know that answer. You don't want to show up in the same cars as somebody else. This is going to be a really popular car. An S58 in a small platform, small package is going to be real popular. So now we have to talk about how you make it your own. I already mentioned we have the intake and exhaust from Turner Motorsports. We're sitting on ECS tuning, lowering springs as well, bringing the ride height down just a little. Car feels wonderfully planted, as you'll see as we take some turns. And those are nice, subtle upgrades. As you can hear or maybe not hear, this isn't some fire-breathing, fireball-spitting exhaust. It's a nice exhaust. We have no drone in cabin. We've been through all the RPM ranges. When I want it to be loud, it is. And when I want to cruise in 6th gear, it's perfect. It's the perfect exhaust for this car. What's really clever about the Turner exhaust on this car is that the flaps open and close just like they would on the BMW. So let's put it in 3rd gear, put it in M2 mode, and now you'll get all the burbles. But gotta go on date night, you put it back in stock mode, and now it just drives like any other daily driver. We are working with the Turner Motorsport short shifter, so that makes the shifting experience and driving experience much better. It probably helps me from not punching my thermos quite as hard because 5th gear stops right there, but you can see how close my knuckle is. So if that were a little longer throw, you're throwing all your Yetis away and you're buying, I don't even know, tiny little baby tumblers. But that's it. I mean, this short shifter is great. Rows through gears with precision. It feels like I'm loading a gun, which is always how I try to exemplify what I want out of my short shifter. Golly, that's planted. And running through the gears is a nice surgical experience. It's precise. So I've honestly struggled with what to say about the exterior appearance of this car. I actually love it. It looks exactly like a doodle I would have done in high school or college when I was supposed to be paying attention in class. A lot of people hate the G chassis everything, but I'm a big fan. And there's a couple of things that wake up the front of this car versus most other M2s you're gonna see. Most obvious is the carbon fiber lower lip here. This is the Turner Motorsport design. You can see how the curvature matches perfectly with the curvature of the bumper, so it gives it that OEM plus look. It's not this huge, stanced out, look at me mod. And what's even more subtle and more delicious about this is stuff that you might miss. This lower IND piece is color matched to the car, and otherwise this is the black section of the car. I'm gonna step back and get out of the way. Look at how that wakes up the front end of this car. That subtle adjustment of line and color gives you a car that's gonna stand out against everybody else. And as we come around, there are other ways that we have to make it your own. For one, wheels. A lot of people love or hate the G chassis wheels. I could care less. This car makes a lot of brake dust, or maybe I make a lot of brake dust, but there are wheel options out there. And as you can see, with the lowering springs, you have that perfect ride height. The ECS lowering springs on this are subtle. They're not this super aggressive drop. And as you saw when we were doing some twisty roads, they really keep control of the ground. It's a beautiful, beautiful OEM plus combination. And it doesn't stop there. You've probably seen this from the thumbnail and went, what is this wing? I love this wing. The integrated gurney flap is removable and adjustable, and it's actually mounted on there. The whole thing is rigid and it's clever. No drilling or cutting required. Simply clamps over the shield, and look at that fitment when you close it. You would think that was OEM as well. Now it's giant and carbon fiber, so it gives you those OEM plus or performance vibes, but man, I love it. It just fits right. It fits with the car. It fits with the design pathos of the car. The gurney flap will allow you some adjustability on track. It is an M2 after all. You're supposed to take this on track. And let's talk a few other things. We've replaced the rear diffuser with the Turner Motorsport rear diffuser with an updated fin design and a little different rake, but that created these sort of indentation holes. So we've also created these side spats. So you can have a whole OEM plus aftermarket look on the rear of your car that actually has some function and it'll actually move some air where you want it to move. And speaking of moving air, we're moving all the exhaust gases through the Turner Motorsport exhaust. You can see the quad tip design just fits perfectly. You step back and objectively, this is a beautiful, beautiful, trackable car. And you know what they say, if you park your car and you don't look at it when you walk away, you bought the wrong car. And I find myself looking at this car every time I park it. And now for the reason anyone is buying a BMW M car, the BMW S58 motor. 460 horsepower right out of the box, not bad. You can see we have the Turner Motorsport carbon fiber intake. This will work for the M2 and the M3. We also have the carbon fiber bracing, a handful of accents from Golden Wrench. Really just wake up the engine bay. Again, this is a very OEM plus attempted to build. But why do we love this? Well, already, this is a brand new motor, and already people are going over 1,000 horsepower on factory internals. This is gonna prove to be probably the most ambitious and moddable motor that BMW has produced in our lifetime. So we've now spent an entire half day in this car, just Grant and I behind the camera. And we've had some good conversation. He brought up a good point. He feels like the car is back to sort of E36 styling, and I think I totally agree. We're back to a smaller platform car. Granted, this is probably way bigger than a E36 is anyhow, but in terms of where cars are going today, we're back into a smaller car. It's a little bit boxier of a design, and I do see some design style cues on the grills and on the headlights from the E36. And I think that's a pretty cool homage to the E36 M3, arguably the car that truly started it all. There's the E30 M3, but come on, who can afford one of those? And for that, I choose the M2 as the best car you can buy today. $65-ish thousand, the M3 is $100,000-ish. You get the same motor as the M3. You get a manual transmission, which we've barely talked about, and you get 1,000 horsepower capable lump of aluminum and steel in the engine bay. What isn't to love? Go drive your car.